Hey everybody out there, this is John G, and I have a special on Amazon called Living Large. It's a stand-up special. It's funny. It was shot at the Comic Strip Live in New York City. You're gonna love it. You're gonna see me at my biggest. See, a few weeks ago, I had a heart attack. So if you don't wanna go watch it because I'm funny, have some pity on me. Go watch my special. I'm in weight. I'm not gonna be so big anymore. No more living large. I gotta lose weight. They want me to take off pounds. I don't wanna take off pounds. I love food. But anyway, go watch the special. It's gonna be funny. And I don't know how much longer I gotta live. I'm wearing this defibrillator thing. I don't know what this thing does. Supposedly it shocks me if my heart stops. My heart stopped years ago. Anyway, John G, Living Large, Amazon. Go check it out before I'm not here to watch.
Good evening. Do you like to laugh? Are you at one with the haha? Do you like your comedy coming over the streaming medias? If so, then go directly to Amazon right now. Do not hesitate and download Jim Andrino's Not Dead Yet. Recorded live at the world famous comic strip. It is a giggle-a-second fun fest. An hour of me for you. Jim Andrino's Not Dead Yet. Available only on Amazon.
Looking for something new to watch? All Media TV, the home of independent content. Subscribe now. Get your free 7-day trial. Order in and binge watch one of our series. Laugh, cry, or crawl under the blankets with a variety of shorts and features. Subscribe now. Get your free 7-day trial. Watch anywhere, anytime, any device. Go to www.allmediatv.com today.
Hey everybody out there, this is John G, and I have a special on Amazon called Living Large. It's a stand-up special. It's funny. It was shot at the comic strip live in New York City. You're gonna love it. You're gonna see me at my biggest. See, a few weeks ago, I had a heart attack. So if you don't wanna go watch it because I'm funny, have some pity on me. Go watch my special. Anyway, I'm not gonna be so big anymore. No more living large. I gotta lose weight. They want me to take off pounds. I don't wanna take off pounds, I love food. But anyway, go watch the special. It's gonna be funny. And I don't know how much longer I gotta live. I'm wearing this defibrillator thing. I don't know what this thing does. Supposedly it shocks me if my heart stops. My heart stopped years ago. Anyway, John G, Living Large, Amazon. Go check it out before I'm not here to watch.
Good evening. Do you like to laugh? Are you at one with the haha? Do you like your comedy coming over the streaming medias? If so, then go directly to Amazon right now. Do not hesitate and download Jim and Drino's Not Dead Yet. Recorded live at the world famous comic strip. It is a giggle-a-second fun fest. An hour of me for you. Jim and Drino's Not Dead Yet. Available only on Amazon.
Looking for something new to watch? All Media TV, the home of independent content. Subscribe now. Get your free 7-day trial. Order in and binge watch one of our series. Laugh, cry, or crawl under the blankets with a variety of shorts and features. Subscribe now. Get your free 7-day trial. Watch anywhere, anytime, any device. Go to www.allmediatv.com today.
New Media Comedy Worldwide Studios. New Media Comedy Worldwide presents Comedy Legacy Series with Jim Mendrinos. And now, your host, Jim Mendrinos.
Hello, everybody. This is Jim Mendrinos. Welcome to the Comedy Legacy Series. We are recording a great episode this afternoon, and hopefully you get to enjoy it wherever you are in the comfort of your own home. Hopefully you're safe. Hopefully you're happy. You're going to learn a lot today. This gentleman that we're bringing on is one of the greatest performers in New York City comedy. He's been doing stand-up for over 30 years. You've seen him on television. You've seen him on Broadway. You've read his book. It's going to be a fun and really complex hour, Mr. Jim David. All right, this one's going to be fun for me because I have not seen our next guest in over a year. I looked at, and the last time I saw you was well over a year ago. And you know, we have to see each other virtually for this one, but it is fun because every time we work together, especially those long drives back from Connecticut, listening to James Bond theme songs, we just laugh so much together. So this is gonna be a fun hour for me. Mr. Jim David. Jim, thanks for joining us.
Good to see you, Jim.
Good seeing you too. And just to start off, you know, because we're recording during pandemic, you're safe, you're good, no worries where you are.
Nope.
Content.
Everything's great.
Good. That's the most important thing, that everyone's safe. So,
Everything's great. I've managed to do okay.
Good.
Very lucky.
So
because I wear a mask.
Yeah, well, we all have to wear our masks. Unfortunately, there's a whole lot of jackasses that don't wear their masks.
Well, I mean, it's like, let me tell you something. If they hate wearing a mask, they're really going to hate wearing a ventilator.
Yeah. But
that's going to be a big, big problem.
Well, you know, but again, you know, at that point, it won't be a choice. So those are people that don't like to choose.
Yeah.
I want to talk about, we know each other, you know, if my calculations are correct, well over 30 years.
Well, I've been comedy since 1986.
Yep.
And so that's 34 years.
Yeah, and we met at Comedy U Grand.
Within a year or two of doing comedy.
Yeah, so we know each other a long time. And,
Long time.
And here's what I always loved about you as a performer. And I wanted to talk about this because you had this from day one. You were always so confident on stage. Like when you stepped on that stage, it belonged to you almost more than any other performer I've ever seen. You just stepped
Really?
there. It was home from the get-go. And I as somebody who's primarily a writer by trade, I sit there and I watch the natural performance and I go, how the hell did they do that? So I think
Oh, you know how they do it. Being
How?
in children's theater my whole childhood, I was a munchkin when I was in the 5th grade in The Wizard of Oz, and then from there I was just in plays all through high school and college. So the stage was. I knew that. I mean, it took me a long time as a comic to develop a persona and to develop security with my material, but the actual presence, being on stage, I mean, I winged it for my first couple of years of comedy, and I made the audience think that I knew what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I could fake it.
Okay.
'Cause, talent is nothing but executing skills with confidence. You know what I mean? It's like it is just. I mean, like an untalented performer who has not a lot to say can still fake it and make you think that they know what they're doing to a degree. Then eventually the people are weeded out, the people that don't know what they're doing. But case in point, I think Donald Trump has the ability to just riff for hours on nothing, and the weak-minded will mistake this as sage. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
He's the greatest bullshitter in history because he just goes out there and just says it, even though he has no answer. He just says it.
Yeah.
If you notice, it's interesting. He'll repeat it because he thinks on his feet, and so he'll repeat. A lot of people are saying it. This is what a lot of people are saying, and a lot of people are saying, and he just says it over and over again to formulate in his head. We're high in the polls. Our poll numbers are really good. We're high in the polls, and we've got great polls. He'll just do that, and so it's just. I don't mean to compare myself as a comic to Donald Trump, but you know what I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah, I absolutely know what you're talking about.
I had a lifetime of being on stage before I started doing comedy. Most comedians, that's when they start going on stage. Mm-hmm. I already was there. Well, so I think that my material in the beginning of my career was really kind of mediocre. I look back at it and I go, well, I wouldn't do that today. But I did what I did and I talked myself into television appearances.
Yeah.
And I fooled them. But the confidence is half the battle. See, that's interesting because I have no confidence in front of a television camera. None. I don't like the way I look. I don't like the angle at me. I don't like the lighting. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
I totally have no confidence in front of a television or movie camera. But when I'm on stage, I'll be in a theater and 1,000, 1,500 people are in the audience, and I'm like, I've got this. It's interesting. But you put me on a camera, and I don't know what I'm doing.
But yet I've seen you on TV all the time, and you do fake it very well. If that's all just a facade,
I don't feel comfortable.
All right.
I was on Tough Crowd with Colin Quinn a whole lot.
Yeah.
For the 2 years I was a regular, and I would look at those. I would look at the broadcast, and I was like, Jesus, why did I wear that? Why was I sitting like that? Why didn't I get my hair done? Why didn't you know what I mean?
Oh, I do.
That's just your personal thing. A lot of famous actors cannot bear to see themselves on film.
Yeah, and you know what? I think we see the mistakes. You know what I mean? When we watch ourselves, we see the mistakes, and we know what we were shooting for, and we judge ourselves based on the shortcomings. Whereas the audience is only seeing what you actually reach.
Right.
And that's a hard part for us as performers. I want to talk a little bit about Tough Crowd for Colin Quinn because you were the odd choice for that show. And in my opinion, that's kind of what made it work. That you were, because that show was, if ever there was an all boys club, that show was an all boys club. And everyone was singular in focus. And most of the regulars were what I used to refer to as the bully crew. They would just take the non-regulars, run over them. And I remember when I was going on to do that show, I had bumped into you at the comic strip about 2 weeks before, and you asked me who I was on with, and I said Patrice, and you said bully him back. That was your advice to me. So what did it take for you to be able to be there? Because you not only fit in, but you, on a lot of those episodes, took over, by sheer force of nature.
I was fighting for my life on that show. We all were, because I had Nick DiPaolo and Patrice O'Neill yelling at me backstage. They tried to mess me up before I got on camera. Mm-hmm. They would say the most homophobic crap that they knew would make me go, and I just had to turn around and give it back to them and not care and never show on camera how much it was really bothering me, because it was. There's no way people can say these horrible things to you and then they're like, oh, well, we're just kidding, lighten up, got to be, yeah. Because Tough Crowd came from the comedians table at the Comedy Cellar, where we used to sit there with Manny, the owner, who's dead now. And I would sit there at the Comedy Cellar table with Colin Quinn and Nick DiPaolo and Patrice O'Neill and Jim Norton and Keith Robinson and Greg Giraldo and an assortment of other people, Rich Voss, and it was every man for himself, because we would get into these horrible political arguments, because Manny was a right-wing Israeli, and he would always want to talk about, should they annex the West Bank? And I don't know. Fuck it. I don't care. They're all crazy. But anyway, we would just get into these knockdown political arguments coupled with insults to each other. You know what I mean? Like really, well, that's because you've, how about the waitresses you tried to bang in Des Moines or whatever? And then somebody would say something absolutely hilarious, and it would totally break the ice, and that's where that came from. And when we were on the air, ultimately the reason why that show did not last more than 2 seasons is because only the comedy junkie could really follow what was going on, because Colin Quinn was the host, and he has the attention span of a fruit fly. And so he would start off with one topic and then immediately go into, well, what about police brutality? And what about the tsunami in Indonesia? And we would, what? I thought we were just talking about our mother. It was just all over the place. And it was also a competition to see who could get in the biggest dig at each other. So it was hard work. You had to go prepared with all these lines that you could, you couldn't go on that show without doing your homework. Yeah. You had to go with prepared. Everybody thinks that, some comedians make all these brilliant observations off the top of their head. No, we would go in there with prepared lines. And then one time, Dennis Leary was on the show with Greg Giraldo.
Oh, yeah.
And Greg Giraldo made a funny remark, and it was clear that he'd written it, but it was funny. And then Dennis said, oh, so is that one of your prepared jokes that you brought on stage on camera? And then Greg right away said, well, Dennis, that's sort of the way we do it here. We sort of prepare and we sort of write comedy. Maybe if you'd written another little more comedy, your show would still be on. And Dennis, you could see the look on his face like, like, oh my God, he got me. Because Dennis came into that show thinking he was kind of above it all. You know what I mean? He thought I'm too good for this. I'm on Rescue Me. I don't need to be on, this show with these comedians and he came on and he got his ass kicked.
And that happened to more than one comic on that show. It's a whole lot of comics that left that show with feelings hurt. A whole lot of one and gone.
A lot of comics couldn't deal with it. But I didn't take it seriously. I did not let it get to me personally. Mm-hmm. And I was, I did the best I could on that show. And Colin liked it because they would come at me. Because at the time, I mean, this was only 2002 to 2004. At the time, believe it or not, a comedian being openly gay on television was still a novelty. There was just me and I think Mario Cantone and Judy Gold, and there weren't that many of us.
No.
Now there's, I mean, the next generation of comics. It's like, I mean, there are so many of them that they just had a diversity showcase in LA where they showed all of these, lesbian and gay and comics of color, and and it's like if you were a white guy, you didn't get on that show. The times have changed. It's all about diversity now. But back then, it was kind of me, and you know what I mean. And so I was sort of the token gay guy on that show, and unfortunately, that's the way a lot of people saw me, and there was nothing I could do about it.
I want to talk a little bit about being out because, I did start with Marion. I did start with Judy. And while they never addressed their sexuality, they never came out either. It was just a non-issue. They were going to talk about the things they were going to talk about. You were open from the first time I saw you.
No, not really. Not really. I mean, it took me about 13 years to actually address it on stage and talk about my partner, who's now my husband.
Right.
But I did it. I was afraid to do it because I thought that somebody would throw stuff at me, which they did at some times. I got a shot glass thrown at me at a bar, and it broke on the brick wall behind me. I was at Helium in Philadelphia, and I just started talking about my partner on stage, and this guy in the audience yelled out, "Hey, is this a gay bar?" And I said, "No. If you want a gay bar, you go outside, and there's a bar over there called the Mansion. You turn left and go down the street." And then the guy said, well, if this isn't a gay bar, would you stop, forcing your gayness all over me? And then I said, "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to ram it down your throat." And the whole audience lost it, and they threw that guy out. But I would encounter, after I came out, and I was the first openly gay man to have a Comedy Central special. That had never been done. That was in 2001.
Right.
And it was still a novelty. And so some people reacted very negatively to it. Like the worst was morning zoos around the country on the radio.
Yeah.
That was the worst because I would go in to plug the show wherever I was, and comedy, at the Funny Bone in Columbus, Ohio. I'd go on the radio, or I'd go on the radio in Detroit with the #1 Michigan talk radio in the morning, and they were not prepared for me. And so when they said, "Are you married?" I said, "No, that kind of marriage isn't legal yet." They would be like, "What? What? It didn't say you were a homosexual in your bio, And no, it didn't. But I got a lot of pushback.
But I do remember we did a show, and I may be misremembering, but I believe we did a show at the bitter end, and somebody yelled out something tremendously homophobic, and I just remember you going off on them in a way that made it clear that you were not going to stand on stage and allow that.
No, I didn't.
Listen,
I don't know where that came from, Jim. I don't know. I think it was years of pent up rage. That I was like, no, this is the 1990s, and no, you're not going to do this to me.
Yeah. And I just loved watching you do that because I loved watching that audience member get progressively smaller, just shrink down in size when he realized the entire room was on your side and not his.
Well, that was what was the hardest. That was what was the biggest surprise, is that when somebody yelled out something insulting at me, the audience would immediately side with me because it's like, leave him alone. Let him do what he's doing.
Yeah.
That was very interesting how that developed.
And one of the most fun things for me, and one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on the show, is everyone always says to me, "How do you handle a heckler?" If somebody heckles you, what do you do? And I tell everyone, just watch Jim David. Just go watch Jim David, because somebody is going to yell something out, and he's going to have 9 new minutes immediately.
One of the greatest things that ever happened. I was performing in a comedy club on a cruise ship, and it was a club on the ship. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
With like 125 seats, so it was a nice little space.
Oh, the old Carnival ones, yeah.
It wasn't Carnival. I think it was
that
Royal
style.
Caribbean.
Yeah.
But I was. It was a perfectly good show. But there was this woman in the audience who was giving the first comedian a lot of trouble. She was like a middle-aged housewife kind of lady, and she was just drunk and she was yelling stuff out. And then the minute I went on stage, she started yelling stuff at me, and I said, "Is this the way it's going to be? Are we going to just listen to your shit for the next 20 minutes, or are you going to allow me to do a show?" And she said, "Well, I came here to see comedy." And I said, "Well, if you'd let me get out of fucking line, then, we could have some comedy." And somehow it was, I remember what it was. Remember before they legalized marriage equality in 2015, they had all these court decisions that gradually legalized it in state after state after state. And that day they had legalized it in like 13 states. And one of them was North Carolina. And I said, "I'm from North Carolina." The whole front row goes, "Yay!" And I said, "Oh, you're from North Carolina?" They said, "Yeah." And I said, "Hey, they legalized marriage equality there today. It just became legal." And they applauded. And then this woman who'd been given trouble said, "Two big thumbs down for that." And I said, "What?" And she said, "Marriage is a sacred covenant only between a man and a woman." And I said, "Not anymore, bitch." And it proceeded from there. And she wouldn't shut up. And I finally had to threaten to call security on her. And then I said, "You know what? This is clearly not the show for you. And I wasn't going to do this, but I'm just going to do 20 minutes of gay material just to piss you off." And there was a black waiter right in the front row serving serving an audience member. And I said, "This is my lover, Mobeni Ungema from Uganda. I was just sitting on his big black cock this morning." And the whole crowd was hysterical. They were hysterical. And he was just sitting there like that. And then after the show, like half of the audience went up to the guest relations desk to complain about her, not me.
That's awesome.
That was a moment of triumph. Because, you have to turn it around and throw it right back in their face. Because remember, you've got the mic. You have the microphone. I mean, this is what sometimes comedians tend to forget, that we have the mic, and everybody's looking at us. They're not looking at them.
Yeah. So
the only danger is when you make it too much about that. I remember I was at Skyline Comedy Club in Wisconsin. Did you ever go there?
Oh yeah, beautiful.
Beautiful club.
Yeah.
It's a first-rate club in a fourth-rate town. And I was on the description. I was on the radio, and they were playing the most racist comedy tapes. It was like a routine about some woman with 25 chillins and, having another baby. I mean, it was just awful. And while I was on the radio, I said, "Well, it's nice to be here on WKKK."
Wow.
You have to just give it back to them,
Yeah. But one of the magic with watching you deal with hecklers is that more than so many comics, you have a dialogue with the audience when you perform. You make us feel like we're having a conversation with you, which is a style of comedy that I adore. That to me, that draws me in more than the presentational type of comics. And when you start with a heckler, you bring in other audience members to your side. You get people to agree with you. You start uniting the rest of the room. Is that something that you do instinctually, or is that something that you learned how to do over time?
I'm sure it's a little both. Mm-hmm. I'm sure I think that most of what we do on stage, we've learned over time. We've learned how to do that. And, it's, I remember I was just at the comic strip before quarantine, and I was doing that. There were only like 35 people in the audience. Mm-hmm. And I was just sort of doing that and bouncing stuff off everybody. And then this one guy almost started taking over in the audience. And I finally said, "Okay, back to me. Okay. Now back to me. Shows up here. Okay." I remember that. And that was funny because that got a laugh, Okay, we're done now. Thank you. Anytime you feel like yelling out some stupid shit, feel free. Go ahead. I don't have an act. I said, "I don't have an act or a career." So go ahead, say whatever you want. But I mean, I think you learn these things because how a comedian, it's like if a joke bombs and you don't acknowledge it and you just move on, it's much more awkward.
Oh yeah.
Like if a joke bombs and I'll say, "Man, that bomb was louder than Hiroshima. You know, then they laugh at it because you're acknowledging what you do. Or what'll happen is, like, I'll be in the middle of a riff talking about something, and then all of a sudden I get tongue-tied, and I'll go, and then I just, hey, like, you know, and I just keep going at it. You know what I mean? So this is all learned over time. Well, you know what's going to work, and you know if you screw up in the middle of a sentence or whatever, just have fun with it and acknowledge it and move on, and the audience is fine. You know, it also helps if they like you.
Yeah.
You know, if they've decided that they like you within the first 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Sometimes they don't. You know, sometimes people just don't, and there's nothing you can do about it. And that's the hardest thing about comedy, I think, is looking at that one face in the audience. That's, you know what I mean? Everybody around them is laughing, but they're like,
yeah,
I'm not getting this.
I've had this conversation with comics all the time. We can get a standing ovation and our eyes will draw to the one person that isn't clapping. It is consistent with us.
Listen, when I did my Comedy Central special, it was in a theater with 500 people, and so many people came that they had to open up the second balcony. There were hundreds of thousands of dollars of equipment aimed at me. They built me a set to my specifications, which was, because I live in New York City and I'm originally from the South, it was a mobile home underneath the Brooklyn Bridge. Kind of brilliant.
Yeah.
I got so many applause breaks that I had to tell the audience, okay, stop applauding after every joke because I want to end this thing. It was the greatest night of my life, and I walked off stage and I said to the sound guy, so was that funny?
Yeah. That's what we do.
I'd gotten a standing ovation at the end of the set. Standing up. And I walked, was that funny? Was that okay?
Why do you think that is what we do? Why? Because it's not just you and me that do it. It's consistently stand-ups that do it. You know, they're either raging egotists.
Unless the audience is crawling over broken glass to lick the hem of our garment, we don't think we've done our job.
Yeah. We're
pathetic. You know, most comedians are incredibly insecure to a degree. You know, it's like we think I'm the funniest person on the show tonight, but I'm also a dick. I don't know what that's about.
Yeah.
But it's true. I think it's true of every comedian to a degree, because we the only way that we can get fulfilled is to go out on stage and have a bunch of strangers laugh at us. You know?
Yeah.
It's a very psychotic thing. It's interesting that since I haven't performed since March the 12th, that was my last gig. I've been okay with taking this break. It's interesting. Yeah, I've been okay with it because I've been taking care of my husband and cooking a ton, and I'll come out here to my second home, and life is good. And I'll go back to performing one of these days. I'll go back, but I have not missed it. Like, I've enjoyed having the time because comedians work very hard. And I'm on the road 25 weeks out of the year, 25 to 30 weeks out of the year.
Yeah.
And I haven't had to go on an airplane since the middle of March. And
that's a bonus. Yeah.
I haven't had to go to an airport. And so I've been okay. I've been writing a lot. I mean, I haven't been sitting around. I'm trying to finish a script, and I've got a bunch of other things I'm working on, and I've been doing stuff like this,
Mm-hmm.
but still, it's been okay. It's been okay. And I'll go back to work, but I don't need it. I've learned that I've done it long enough that, okay, I can take a break now. And look, you have to accept it. The one comedian, Vanessa Hollingshead, asked me if there's anything that I've learned from this time. And at first I said no. But then the second thing I said was, well, I've learned that acceptance is my friend, because I have to accept what is happening in the world right now. There's nothing I can do about it. And, certain certain political leaders are not going to die just because I want them to.
Oh, if only wishes could come true. I'm with you on that one.
But we have to accept what I've accepted it, and also I'm doing my best with the time.
Now, I also want to talk about this, and it's a bit of a serious topic. So, I hope you'll indulge me for a couple of seconds. When we first started, I saw some veteran comics say some shit to you that I walked up to them afterwards going, that's not cool, right? And I saw you have to deal with some shit from club owners on occasion. A couple of things that Lucian said to you on occasion where they're like, that's none of your business, and you went through a lot of shit when you started, and yet you've always been one of the kindest, most giving people in the industry. You don't view it as a competition. When new comics come up to talk to you, I've seen you talk to them. I've seen you give them advice. I've worked with you, and when we've worked together, you've come getting off stage going, hey, I got a line for you, or I got an idea for you. How do you maintain that level? How did you not become a complete douchebag, given all the shit you went through to start with, and maintain that amount of humanity?
Wow. I've never been asked that. I've never even thought about that. Thank you for saying that. I think I cared what people thought of me, and I didn't want to come off as a dick. I could have, given some of the things that some people said to me. Well, I remember when I first worked at the comic strip, Lucian, may he rest in peace, he was the owner. Mm-hmm. And I mean, he wasn't the owner, he was the manager and the booker and everything. And I was noticing that I was getting not good spots. I was getting the opening spot or the closing spot on the show, which was from 9 to 1 at the time.
Yeah.
And I went up to him and I said, is there any way I can get spots closer to the middle of the show? And he said, well, the prime spots are for the people who are going to be stars. The Chris Rocks, the Adam Sandlers. The rest of you have to fight it out amongst yourselves. And I just looked at him and I said, okay. And I did not go back into that club until he was gone. So that's how I just didn't go back. I didn't call him in. I didn't give my availability. I just said, if he thinks that, then I'll go work somewhere else, which is what I did for the remainder of his time there. And then when JR took it over, I went back, but I remember I tried not to take all that stuff seriously. And I saw what other comedians were doing, and I didn't want to be like that. I saw other comedians were very territorial and competitive, and they were very quick to say, that guy's a hack, he stinks, And I was like, well, that guy may have a sitcom. I mean, that's in fact what happened. I mean, if you had told me back when we were first starting out and working with Adam Sandler, if you had told me that guy was going to be one of the biggest movie stars in the world, I would have said, you're out of your mind. And that's what happened. And so you never know who's going to do what. You never know. And also, I realized that it's really not a competition. I mean, I used to get upset that I wasn't considered for stuff and other people were. Sure, we all do, But then eventually it came around to my turn. And eventually I did get to go to Montreal for 4 times. And eventually I did get picked for this. And I did do the late night shows. And you know what I mean? But we all have our own time. And it also comedy is very subjective. But you know what I mean? It's like we either think somebody is funny or we don't.
Yeah.
And look, there are certain famous comedians I just don't think are funny. They don't make me laugh. But then somebody like our dearly departed friend Vic Henley had me on the floor all the time, And George Wallace, who George Wallace, Jerry Seinfeld's best friend. Yeah. George has been an idol of mine ever since I saw him at Catch a Rising Star, talking about the lady on the plane with the big titties and the melon-headed little baby. She had the biggest titties. She was in coach and the baby was in first class. But I met George in Vegas through a mutual friend, and he came and saw my show, and now we're in contact all the time. But who knows how that's going to happen. So you just have to accept what happened. And so I think that in the times when people would disrespect me, I came home and, shed a few tears and then let it go, because it's a tough, cold business. And if you let it get to you, it will, you know? And it does. See, I have a gag about it. It's like, you know how you'd be on the road, there's an opener, a feature, and a headliner. And the opener would always go, well, I usually feature. And the feature would go, well, usually I usually headline. And then the headliner would go, well, I usually am on a sitcom. I'm usually doing theaters or on a sitcom. And then the guy on the sitcom goes, well, I usually am nominated for an Oscar. It just doesn't stop.
Yeah.
So I would always try not to be one of those guys. I looked at other people and I'd say, I don't want to do that.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, it makes perfect sense. It's just, I'm always amazed when I see people, because, I didn't get the kind of shit that somebody like you did when they started out. Maybe it was.
Well, I was not one of the guys.
Yeah.
I was an off the charts, different person. I was first of all, I was gay, and secondly, I was not like I was not a comic who talked about how he just broke up with his girlfriend.
Yeah.
I was, and that's why it's really good what's happening in comedy now, is that diversity is king, because you see all these different types of comics that when we first started out, it was a white guy's game.
Yeah, it was. Oh yeah, absolutely.
And then you'd have somebody like Chris Rock who would come along and be so good that you couldn't deny him. You know what I mean?
But I was there. They did for his first 3 years. His first 3 years in the business. Oh, Lucian, you think Lucian gave, you shit. But man, some of the stuff he put that kid through was amazing. Yeah. Yeah. Really? It's funny how talent finds a way to, find a watermark.
Yeah.
So I also want to talk about, you are so entrenched in theater, and you bring your theater influences into the stand-up stage. Sometimes subtly, sometimes it's just a reference. I kind of count the musical references when I watch you, because you slip them in there and you don't announce them. They're just part of a setup somewhere randomly, and it's beautiful to watch. How much of the theater did you take with you, and how much has stayed with you? Because now, as you said when we started the interview, you started in the theater, but now you've been doing stand-up much more and much longer than you were ever in the theater. How much of it still stays with you?
All of it. All of it. If I could stop doing comedy right now and go do a show on Broadway, I would be the happiest. And just in a small part, you know what I mean? Like, yeah. I'd walk on stage and go, "Hey, everybody, here comes the pump wagon," and then, that would be it. That would be fine, because the theater is so much fun. I love being in the building. I like sitting in the tech rehearsals and watching them hang the lights. It's so much fun. And I did make it to Broadway one time. I did. And so the show was not a hit, but I was still on. It was a 9-month period of my life where I would go to the Lunt-Fontanne Theater every afternoon and rehearse, and then we would perform at night. And it was the greatest experience of my life. And I was wearing a turquoise bugle-beaded tuxedo designed by Bob Mackie. So, it was heaven. It was heaven.
Let's talk about that, because that was,
I used to, before I was a comedian, I used to direct high school plays in high school theater. So it's all a part of it. I'm a creature of it.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about that, because you've been on TV, you've had your own Comedy Central special, you've done the late night shows, all the things that comics want to do, and yet I just saw your face light up talking about a small role for 9 months in a show that wasn't even, in your words, a major hit. What is it about, that experience that trumps the stand-up experience?
Did I lose you?
You're a little frozen, but you'll come back in a second. Are you there, Jim?
Are you there?
There you are. Yes.
Okay.
You are back.
It froze.
Yeah.
Froze.
Welcome to the world of Zoom technology.
Yeah, right.
Let's what was it about the theater and about that experience on Broadway in particular that just was so satisfying for you?
It's the camaraderie of working with the other actors and the directors and the stage managers. It's an ensemble, and that's what I miss most about it while I'm doing comedy. With comedy, you're all alone. You're all alone, and sometimes you're really alone, meaning the other comics don't even want to watch you. They don't want to see you. It's you and the audience, and that's it. When you're in a show, you go to the theater, you hang out in the dressing room with everybody. You know, it's a group effort. It's like being on a television show. It's the same. It's kind of the same experience. Like if you're on a soap opera or a situation comedy or even a drama or a movie, that's working with people, and that's the best part of it. That's why you look forward to going to work every day.
Yeah.
And then there's also the interesting thing of you're doing the same show over and over again. Like when you're on Broadway, it's 8 times a week. And you have to somehow make that performance fresh. And you have to figure out a way to just put a little gesture in, or just a little way that you really have to listen to the other performers and be in the moment, you know?
Yeah.
And then if you're doing something like Shakespeare or a period drama in verse, you have the added skill of having to learn how to do that. So you have to know what you're saying when you're doing Richard II and you say, "Of comfort no man speak, let's talk of graves, of worms and epitaphs, make dust our paper and with rainy eyes write sorrow on the bosom of the earth." You have to know what the hell that means. Sometimes you don't.
That's all precision work. That's all. When we talk about theater, we're talking about, Bill Hickey was the person, my theater teacher, growing up in New York City. And he used to talk about the precision of theater and the landing everything in its own isolated, perfect spot. And yet I see you doing that with your stand-up. I see you doing that, holding a pause for that exact perfect amount of time, embracing the silence from the audience, and not rushing to a punchline because you need to hear the laugh. Yeah. How much
George Carlin always said, "Don't be afraid of the silence."
Yeah.
Don't be afraid. Just they're still listening to you.
Yeah.
Not every moment has to be boom, boom, boom. That was one of the hardest lessons to learn. That took years, because I grew up watching Rodney Dangerfield and Phyllis Diller.
Yeah.
And every line was, if you want to laugh, go to YouTube and search Phyllis Diller fat jokes on YouTube. And it's a 6-minute clip from her HBO special back in the 80s or 70s, late 70s, I don't know, whenever. She was one of the first HBO specials. Mm-hmm. And the whole setup is, she says, "My mother-in-law is coming over this weekend. King Kong with an overnight bag, Jell-O with a belt." And then she proceeds to do 6 minutes of fat jokes, just one after the other. You get in an elevator with her, you better be going down. No, we didn't have a sunken living room until she came over. We now have a Persian rug. She sat on the cat. She likes to go downtown and watch and burn out all the escalators. Just one after the other. It's really great.
Oh, yeah.
But
that's also a lost art.
When I was teaching comedy, with Andy Engel's outfit, I would always make my students watch Phyllis Diller. They'd never heard of Phyllis Diller. And I would always make them watch those clips, and Rodney Dangerfield and Woody Allen. Yeah. And I would say, because just to teach them that the first thing you have to have is material, and then you can, work on the delivery. But the first thing you have to have is a good stand-up act is good material presented with confidence. That's it.
I want
and
to
and same thing that an actor does,
Yeah, yeah, but
except for an actor, the lines are somebody else's.
Yeah, and we have to create those for ourselves. I want to talk a little bit about that energy that you bring to the stage, because you're not a typical high energy act. You're not bouncing off of the sides of the stage, but you bring energy and enthusiasm every time you perform. Every show, I've done 2 show nights with you, or bounced it in clubs where I've seen you do 3 or 4 sets in a night, and you have just as much energy on the last one as you did on the first one. let's talk a little bit about, do you maintain that energy? Do you perform to it? Or is it something that happens with the adrenaline of the moment?
Um, it's usually it's like, okay, let's go. Okay, let's go do this. I guess it's just natural. I don't know. I have a naturally loud voice. I have a naturally loud stage voice.
Mm-hmm.
So my presence is strong to begin with because I'm loud,
Yeah.
And so I guess I've fooled you into thinking that I'm energetic, but I usually want to. I don't do a show not to have a good time. I mean, because remember, the reason we're doing this is because this is all supposed to be fun.
Yeah.
And then something, I can't wait to see what's going to happen. I'm excited because it's new to me too. I mean, even though I'm doing the same jokes, there's always a slightly different reaction. And then you'll have somebody in the audience that all of a sudden is screaming and cackling with laughter and they can't stop. And there's that is fun to happen. And then I don't like, we talked about being heckled before, and I don't like being heckled, so
Yeah.
I'm not looking forward to that.
No.
But
yeah, let's hope when they come back they have a little more class when they come back. We can hope for that. I want to talk about your writing process because you always have new material. You're always working on something new every time I see you. How often do you write? What is your process to getting something ready for the stage?
I write every day. I go through the news and get ideas. I try not to write too much topical material because the late night guys are going to get to the same stuff before I do, and they've got a team of 12 writers. Mm-hmm. So one time when I did a podcast, I interviewed this playwright called Charles Bush. Have you ever heard of him?
Mm-hmm.
He did Vampire Lesbians of Sodom, and the lady. He's done a bunch of brilliant stuff, and he wrote The Tale of the Allergist's Wife that was on Broadway. And he said he writes down every single idea that he ever gets. He always has a pad with him, mm-hmm. and that's why I love the smartphone, because it has a note thing. And so I'll write down I took that from Charles, but I also used to do it all the time. You just write down every idea that you get. You don't have to write a joke, and then once you look at the material, like say, I haven't written much material about the pandemic because everybody else is talking about it all the time. And when this is all over and I go back on stage, I'm not going to really want to talk about it. Maybe a few or three or four lines about it, but then let's move on, But I was looking at the protests and I went, how could I make this funny? Because this is horrible. All this violence and everything, it's not funny. But then I went, oh, I get it. And I just came up with a line: black people protest when they're being murdered. White people protest when they can't get a haircut. So you just try to find a funny take on it. And sometimes this takes hours. This. I mean, sometimes it'll take a long time to come up with. I mean, people think that we sit down and, pearls of wisdom come out. No, it's hard work. It's work where you have to, and then you have to go back to the basic construction of a joke. You know what I mean? It's like, this is the way you write a joke. It goes over here, and then it comes back that way. So in other words, my wife, what a cook. I didn't know toast had bones. Or the old Henny Youngman line where he says, my wife said she wanted to go somewhere she'd never been. I said, try the kitchen. So it's on the most basic level of that, you have to take it one way, and then it comes back the other way. Because that's the surprise. So you just have to know that what you're doing is that. So there's a difference between a joke and a statement. Mm-hmm. A statement is these people are the stupidest motherfucker. You know what I mean? But no, you have to come around and say these people are like half of the country thinks that Yves Saint Laurent is the night before Saint Laurent. You have to somehow come and make that to it.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm not making these. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah.
It's you have to write it on a whole bunch of things, and probably about half the stuff that you write at least is not going to work. Mm-hmm. You may think on the page that it's interesting, but then when you get up and do it, if the audience doesn't laugh at it, doesn't work.
Yeah.
right? You know,
Yeah.
there's nothing you can do about it. So it's like, damn it, and I will even say, if I do a new joke on stage that doesn't work, my takeaway, my save line is, I had the highest hopes for that joke, you know, and then they always laugh at that,
Yeah.
right? So I try to write every single day for at least 30 minutes to an hour, at least. And right now I'm trying to finish a script, and that's horrible. That's killing me, because I don't know what happens.
Yeah, when you're writing it, I don't
end.
know. Yeah.
Ideally, I should know where I'm going with it, but don't.
But now
But I've got some really good scenes.
you've written a one-person show. You've written a novel. You've written longer form stuff before. You know, so how is the process for that different for you than your stand-up writing?
When I when I wrote my novel, I was writing it on the road out of boredom, and I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know where I was going. The way it started was, I was in a restaurant, in a hotel, and I saw this woman sitting by herself eating, and she did not look happy. And so I started writing about her and just making up a whole life for her. Then she got up and went away, and I kept writing. And that was my novel, you know. But it was, you just write about it, and write about the situation, and you just write it, and then you go back and edit it, and then you go back and do it again. Writing the one-person show was a whole different thing, because that was pretty much written on stage in a way. I mean, it was you know, I would write the play I did, the one-man show, was called South Pathetic, and it was, I mean, I toured it around the country for like 15 years, and you know, the first few performances of it, it was about half of what it eventually ended up becoming, because I didn't know how to get here and to go there. And so I modeled it on Lily Tomlin. I modeled it on what she did, you know, where she was not afraid to have a conversation between two characters by just going, what do you think? Well, I don't know. You know what I mean? So you get to have the two characters talk to each other. Right. So that was that took a lot of a workshop, a lot of performing. And then I would tape every performance and go back and look at it and go, let me change it to this, and how do I get to there? And I worked with a really good director who, you know, would say, maybe go over here. The guy that helped me create it. So that was a real collaborative effort. So it's a real different process. But writing the novel and that was completely in my head and the computer. You know, I didn't have to. And then eventually, once I had like 400 pages written, I sent it to some literary agents, and one of them recommended an editor that I should work with. So I sent it to this editor, and she agreed to take it on. And then she would go through the book and say, take this from chapter 12 and put it in chapter 1. And then move this over here, and then move this there. And at first I was like, when I got her 35-page analysis of what I'd written back, at first I was like, what do you mean this isn't ready for the Pulitzer Prize? What are you talking about? You mean? And then I went, you know what? Just do the fucking work and do what she says and see how it turns out. And so I did. And I followed all of her directions and rewrote it, and had this over here and this over here. And she said, okay, cut this out, because you never come back to this character. You don't need it there, you know, stuff like that. And so that was really that was an interesting process, really, really interesting and hard. And it took a long time, because, I mean, the book exists. It's out there. You can order it on Amazon. It's called You'll Be Swell, and it's a lot of fun. And it's about a struggling actress who falls off of a cruise ship by mistake, and that starts a chain reaction that makes her famous. And it's really fun. And I'm real proud of it.
Well, you should be.
I had some interest. This guy who produced this movie, What's Love Got to Do With It, about Tina Turner, was this close to optioning it for a movie, and then ended up not doing it. But wouldn't that have been something?
That would have been something. We've been. I mentioned a whole lot of people that, you know, were shitty when you started, but who are some of the people that helped you? Who are some of the artists that were kind to you and made the beginning journey nicer for you?
In the beginning?
Yeah, or throughout your career.
Lewis Black. Lewis Black was always very supportive of me. Eddie Brill was great to me. Daryl Hammond was a big supporter. Greg Rigel.
Yeah.
Colin Quinn was a big supporter of mine. Surprisingly, because I didn't think Colin would like my work at all, but he did. A bunch of them, a bunch of guys.
Oh,
You were really good to me. You always have been.
that's sweet
And
of you to
your
say.
ex-wife was lovely to me, Leanne.
Yep.
She was always very sweet to me. I mean, there were most of them. There were a few comedians that didn't really talk to me.
Yeah.
But they didn't talk to anybody else either. You know, it wasn't just me.
Yeah.
Oh, Joy Behar. Joy Behar was really a big help to me. She was a big supporter. And I just think it's unbelievable. Joy is the luckiest comedian in the entire world because she said to me early on, she said, I'm interested in this city. I don't want to go on the road. I don't want to play the funny bone in Norfolk, Virginia. I want to stay here. And she did. And now for the last 20 years, she's been on television and she's worth about, $80 million or something ridiculous like that.
Wow.
So, she's never left the city.
And she does not have to. And that's the dream, isn't it? We all have that dream.
Oh my God. And she's able to go on a television show and just talk about current events with famous people.
Yeah. That's the greatest job.
And have somebody.
Wow.
I'll take it.
Yeah, I think we'd all take it. You've been incredibly kind, and we've been spending an hour about talking. What's next? What are you still looking forward to do that you haven't done yet? What's your bucket list for showbiz?
My bucket list is to do something. Well, it's hard to see right now. You know what I mean? It's like it's hard to see what the hell. I mean, because we're going to be the last people to go back to work. Because we can't go back to work until audiences can go to a club. And I mean audiences can sit in a club, not with the social distancing, just back to normal. So immediately I would like to go back to that. Yeah. Just to go back to normal, back to some clubs and some ships but for the third act of my life, which I'm in, I would like to. I'm going to try to do something in the theater when the theater comes back. I'm going to try to do something that I've always wanted. I would like to try to do some stuff that I've always wanted to do and somehow never done. We'll see. We'll see what happens because I don't know how this is all going to play out. None of us do.
No.
I mean, until then, I'll just keep writing and I'll keep doing what I'm doing. And if I get this script done that I'm working on, maybe it's a film. Maybe somebody will want to make it. That would be fun. Because there are so many options for. I mean, like I showed the first act of this screenplay to a television writer that I respect, and he's a showrunner. Mm-hmm. And he said, "No, this is great. I can't wait to see what happens." No, he was really encouraging. And I said, "Well, were you ever bored?" And he said, "No." And so that's good. So we'll see. I would like to. That's my dream is to finish that script because just to get it done, the thing done. Because so many people are like, "Well, I got an idea for this," and also I don't know if it's a script or a miniseries. It could be. I don't know if it's a 2-hour movie or a miniseries. At this point, it's looking more like a miniseries because I just keep writing all these little stories in it. Or maybe it's just a bad miniseries. But there are so many venues. I mean, my God, there's Amazon, there's Netflix, there's Hulu. Getting a show on network television is really the last thing that anybody's thinking about right now. How about that?
Yeah.
Remember how we all wanted a development deal so we could have a sitcom?
Yeah.
Now people are doing their own. People are shooting it themselves on YouTube, and they're all doing it.
Yeah,
and
it's
web series. Look at Billy Eichner. I mean, Billy Eichner started following people on the street, screaming. Oh, excuse me. No, decline.
Yep.
I just got Are you
You're
still
back.
there?
Yep.
I just got a call. I just had to decline it. But yeah, Billy Eichner did it himself. He started running along the street, just Meryl Streep, or Lena Horne, anything, just screaming at people. And now he's got that got picked up for Fuse TV or something, and then he has his own show on Hulu, and he's in The Lion King, and so all of that happened because he picked up the phone or got a camera and did it.
Yeah.
So maybe I can come up with something like that to do. That'd be fun.
Yeah, it absolutely
We'll see.
would be. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing you again in clubs as soon as they reopen, and
Good, Jim.
continuing this
Thank you
conversation
for thinking of me.
face-to-face. No,
It's a fun conversation.
Comics need to learn from the good people. That's the whole philosophy behind this show. Because you don't have to be a dick, to do this.
No, you don't.
Despite popular
Because that
opinion.
will listen. But I think that's if you're a dick, that will follow you.
Yeah, it absolutely.
You know what I
will.
mean? I mean, there are some people in our business that have a reputation for being a dick, and there's only one reason they have that reputation is because they're a dick.
Yeah, that is true. Well, I'm going to wrap
So
up
that's
here.
it.
I'm going to wrap up here with Jim, and I'll be back to end this in just a second. Thank you so much, Jim. I think what I most admire from Jim is the amount of grace that he has shown over the years and the ability to really stay human, to really stay focused on this is an entertainment where we deal one-on-one with the audience and to stay open and not let the industry or the jackasses bring them down to their level. It's a level of grace and dignity you don't usually get to see. And it's fun that he's also such an accomplished artist as well. We have got a lot of great guests coming up in the next few weeks. You're going to be excited. Keep tuning in. Keep watching. Let us know who your favorites are. Comedy Legacy at nmcworldwide.com if you want to drop us a line. You can go back and watch previous episodes on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/New Media Comedy TV. There's a lovely playlist. All the videos are on there. Or you could even catch us wherever you get your podcasts. Apple, Spotify, iTunes. Go there. Let us know. Subscribe, comment, drop us a line. Let us know. But on behalf of everybody involved in the Comedy Legacy series, we thank you for tuning in. We will see you again next week. Have a great week, everybody. Bye-bye.
This has been a New Media Comedy Worldwide production.
Thank you for watching the Comedy Legacy series. New episodes air every Monday at 9 p.m. Eastern on New Media Comedy TV YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you next week.